Okay.
I know what that makes for, so.
That's why I was there.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. Are you okay? Go ahead and start.
Thank you, sir.
I can hear you.
All right, thank you. It is 4:05. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have all committee members present. And we will now go into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the audit committee on any scheduled matter unless additional time is authorized by the committee. All commentaries shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual and no more than 15 minutes total. Do we have anyone on virtually? We don't have any on virtually, and we have no public comments in here. Okay, we'll move on to the scheduled matters. The first one is the approval of the draft minutes of November the 30th. I hope everybody has had time to review them. And do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
We have a raised hand
I'll
by Mr. Okay, by Rob and by the vice mayor. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll now move on to the scheduled matter of the Kiwanis Club agreement. And who will be taking that?
Well, there were a couple of action items asked to do that. One was to have the building inspector as well as code enforcement provide a facility review. It probably hasn't happened in quite some time. And so notes from that and recommendations have been provided in the packet in regard to some things that would be easy and critical to address, and then others kind of more long terms of looking at ADA restroom access and things of that nature. So and Donnie helped facilitate that. And so if there's any but again, these would be responsibilities of the licensees to make those.
I see here that we have the one on Newcomb, which is the existing building of the Kiwanis, and over here was the Boy Scouts building. And a lot of
Which I think is a fair, the most recent, well, how do I say, the one that most recently the Boy Scouts were in, not a good shape, as we,
I read that.
which is probably one of the reasons that the Elks is saying, hey, we're happy to give this back to you. So in regards to the Kiwanis building, some of them more easy fixes. Sure, there was the covers on exposed wiring, some of those things that just need to be addressed.
Mr. Knight provided me, apologize, John, today, some information also about that corner. He just wanted me to note long-term in the integrated master plan, Morton Avenue tank site under the 2040 conditions, constructed 4 million gallon of storage for the centralized pressure zone. They identified the location, the southeast Veterans Park, the intersection of Morton and Newcomb is this location. So long term, where the building sits, Mike informed me that was located as a potential spot for a future water tank for the city.
Future water tank.
For potable water?
Yes.
So
yeah. But he just wanted me to note that.
Which area was that?
So there's a diagram of the
Kiwanis.
site.
It's in here.
So it's just in the plan, he sent me a screenshot.
So what they're saying is that in this area, which is also interesting because we have a project. So we talked about this last meeting. We have a trail project funded through CMAQ that's going to be on the north side of the slough. So there's I call it phase 2 and 3. We did phase 1 of the Veterans Park Trail that right now goes from the parking lot on the north side of the park, goes from the parking lot over connects to the other parking lot where the skate park is. And then phase two was to go from that parking lot down to this area here along Newcomb. And then phase three was to go on the south side of Veterans Park, wrapping around and coming back to the corporation yard. Both of those phases were funded through TCAG under a CMAQ grant, almost 3 million, is my memory. That's about $3 million to develop this trail, which is right now in design. Will be, I was talking with Javier about this week. We'll be submitting that design because we have to basically hold. So that funding is now for us to go to Caltrans and say, we're ready to go to construction. So we anticipate going to construction on this part in the fall. We'll have design done. Environmental's already been done. So it'll be a matter of, I think, right? We already did.
Yes, that was evaluated. It was because it was essentially went higher.
So the design will be complete. We'll be going to construction, I would anticipate in the fall, but that'll be on the north side of the slough. As you're imagining on the south side of Veterans Park. In this area, we have in the parks, which is interesting. So we have competing master plan improvements. So we have water master plan improvements that talk about a 4 million gallon tank in this area, but we also have a parks master plan that talks about parking, restroom facility, and playground area on this side as well, all in the same area.
Which there could be a way that those all work together. It just has to be such.
Could be subterranean tank, right?
Yeah, candidly, on other tanks that we're looking at.
Yeah, we're looking at a subterranean tank as well inside for tertiary treatment. Because we're gonna have to develop several million gallons of storage for tertiary treatment on the inside. That's good, I say I learned something every day. I just learned that there's supposed to be a 4 million gallon tank at that corner.
And again, it doesn't have to be that very location. It's something to bring it up in that vicinity there, that corner, there's planned to be a water tank.
Just for clarification, that's the corner, that's over by the Newcomb site.
Correct.
Yeah, Newcomb and Morton.
Okay, gotcha.
And apologize, I just got the information today. I wanted to make sure I shared it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Wow. Whiteford, did you have any concerns? I'm looking at comments on both of them, and then I'm looking at the code enforcement comments on both of them. And here on this one, it's unsafe. And how much does something or upgrade on this? And then I'm saying if it's going to be used for future purpose on the Kiwanis site. Anybody have any comment to this?
I was going to add that I did in follow up to the discussion at the last meeting, and I don't remember if it was actually even pertaining specifically to this one or the other or the next item on the agenda, but there was a discussion concerning possessory interest tax. So I did a little poking around just to get clarification on that. So what we do know for sure is that the city, our ownership of the property, we are exempt from the property tax. Okay, so we start with that exemption. Then though, however, possessory interest can be triggered depending on who we provide use of property to. And it's not just leases, it's exclusive use. If you have an exclusive use of a piece of property, whether it's under a license or a lease, it can trigger. It doesn't even have to be a written agreement. If it's there, it technically triggers the possessory interest, and therefore it could be subject to taxation. Which then leads to, are the nonprofits exempt from that? And the question and the answer to that is not necessarily. So what ends up happening is a nonprofit has to go and actually ask to get an exemption. It's basically called a welfare exemption when you're talking about the property, and you can try to do it. You can request it under the guise of because you exist for charitable purposes. But here's the catch: the taxing authorities have made determinations that these social/philanthropic clubs are not necessarily fully tax exempt on all properties they use. So their meeting houses generally are not exempt from possessory interest tax. If they are running like a camp or something, that is the camp, it's, that property or whatever, wherever that is, if it's, that then it's eligible for an exemption. So, and so actually, the information that I found from the State Board of Equalization actually dealt the two examples they were citing as to, to where meeting houses were not exempt was Kiwanis and Lions Club. So, but then went on to say that charitable, that if you have a program that you're running specifically on a piece of property that is specific. So I think it becomes an issue of degree, but I think it really is, it has to be completely for that. And see, they view these organizations as both for your own benefit, for networking purposes, as well as for charitable benefit. So it's kind of they're considered hybrid organizations, basically. So I just thought I'd add that. And so, because I know there were questions that were raised, because I know that some organizations have been, basically have found that they are subject to possessory interest tax, and we're wondering why. It's really not our issue, because our property generally starts as exempt. And that's why we have these provisions in the agreements that say, hey, FYI, to the extent your use triggers this issue, it's it's the licensee's responsibility and not going to be the city's, because the city is exempt from that, given its governmental uses. So I just wanted to provide that for clarification.
As a follow-up to that, Julia, so I would say that in almost every circumstance, the meeting place is going to be the same as activities, where activities are offered. So Barn Theater, so their board will meet at the Barn Theater, but also functions as where.
So my answer to that is, it's on those organizations to go ask for that welfare exemption, and they get a determination from the taxing authority as to whether or not it'll apply. I can't tell them that it will or will not.
Right. So that goes to my experience with Chema, which they had not provided it, but in my conversations with the then assessor, said based on the description of the organization and the events that occurred there and activities, that it met the criteria and was not.
That's great. Yeah.
Right.
But I think it is a matter of degree, though, because it's going to be, most of these aren't one or the other, right? That's the issue. It could be, no one is solely using their place for just their meetings, and then solely using another location only for their charitable functions. So,
I don't know how the current assessor is doing it, but the assessor, when it was Assessor Hill, Hill, right?
It was one time, yeah.
Yeah, Roland Hill. Yeah, I was like, wait. It was pretty broadly interpreted to the favor of the.
Because then it really becomes an issue as to whether or not the state takes an issue with the county's interpretation. But that, again, then that's not our problem. That's not the nonprofit's problem, right? That becomes the issue between the county and the state of California. So, anyways, I just thought I'd put that.
I think
So
what
Julia has
because Maria might have initiated on the other one.
Like, I think we wanted to incorporate it into the agreement
But I think-
that under that part that they ensure that they are seeking that
Correct.
that exemption. I think that was what.
Right. I think, but a helpful statement to add would be, that the licensee is responsible for making application for applicable, tax exemptions. So, and then we can put something in there to that regard, and that way they're kind of, notified of that issue in case, we already are covered from a liability standpoint, because we already have a language in there that says that they're going to be on the hook for possessory interest tax. But I think what ends up happening is that organizations don't necessarily understand what that means.
And we have line, is Bert?
Yes,
Okay, we have you online from this organization for Kiwanis.
yes. And to just to inform the group, we do pay taxes on the club. We just finished paying this year's taxes. We did at one time have somebody go over that, and they felt it would just be easier for the club because of the different varieties of events that we do, is just to pay the property tax on that.
Okay.
And I can forward Donnie a copy of all that.
Vice Mayor, do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? Ross?
This just came up because in the
Yeah.
past, Chema had, when that tax bill came, said, well, this is the cities, and he
Right.
said, not, it's the nonprofits, and we were able to assist them with the assessor's office to get the exemption. And it went retroactive too. Yeah, it wasn't even just that, he set it back 2 years as well.
That's nice.
Yeah,
I have a question for Julia. With regard to the agreement that is existing, well, everything, will there be things that change in your?
I would update the legal stuff. So there's housekeeping, but I don't know that you guys necessarily want to go through all that I mean, I can do, I wasn't sure where we were at this stage. I think I wanted to find out what substantive changes you guys wanted to make, or if there was a complete change in direction on the use of this property before moving forward, but we'll add, and we just did the barn theater one, for instance, and we have subsequent agreements. So we would update the terms just to make sure the indemnification is up to date, make sure all of the standard clauses are up to date. But those are really only my comments at this point. I think it's the big decision is, what do you guys want to do? Are we moving forward? What kind of term are you looking for with regard to this? Kind of like the big questions need to be answered. And then once we get the big questions answered, I can incorporate all that other stuff into this.
So this, to the agreement with Kiwanis, there is no current agreement. So we need to establish a current agreement with them. What we may want to consider is doing, in the absence of a current agreement, doing something like on a 5-year basis or something similar to what we did with the Barn Theater, which was a 5-year agreement to be reevaluated.
Well, especially if you guys are wondering what you're doing, if there's a question on the intention or the use of the property, I would definitely recommend we not do quite as long term then, because the city may be needing to utilize that property. It may not, it may be able to make it work. But since we don't know, or if we don't have those answers, then we want to make sure we keep the term relatively short. I mean, I know there's usually a clause in there that says notwithstanding that we can revoke, but we don't like to do that, right? We'd like to stick to our terms on our license agreement if we can.
Yeah,
So-
one question that I had, just in looking at evaluating the prior agreement from the year 2000, was items 4 and 5. Driving by the facility there, it seems as if this was to be improved, parking lot was to be improved, parking spaces and level lighting. And this is the standard of the parking user services director. I'm just not sure if that's been completed, and if that hasn't been completed, what the direction we can do in that section. They have that in the new one as well. It's because the ADA, Julia, why I brought it up.
Oh, yep.
Thing, so it's a dirt. It's not the city standard. It's an old building, so I get why it's the way it is, but I still want to bring that to life for you to consider.
That's actually a good question, Julia. So if you enter into a new agreement, what does that trigger? Does that trigger improvements?
I don't know. I'd have to look. On the one hand, we're not usually what the obvious thing that triggers it is improvements, but I don't know about actually leasing it, but it could. I mean, I don't like that we're leasing something that's not compliant.
Right.
Javier probably knows.
Is there any liability to the city?
That's what we're.
Well, this gets to so if someone were to sue Kiwanis for failure to access, or which we have active litigants right now on access. Case in point, we have an individual that threatened litigation against his street over sidewalk access, because there are mailboxes that have been, back in the day, mailboxes were on the sidewalk, and these are not, and so that doesn't provide sufficient pathway travel on the sidewalk that's required by law. So threaten the litigation. So we're having property owners relocate mailboxes to meet the standard, and there's not everybody's happy about that. And we've had a number of litigants on ADA issues, which this becomes in the question, to what extent does the city incur liability by entering into an agreement knowing that there are insufficient ADA for parking as well as facilities?
I think it's a tough one because, these organizations don't have tons of money for this new stuff, so I don't know how they're going to be able to do it.
Right. The question becomes whether we should be leasing it at all, right? It's not even, because that, you're right. I mean, it can be expensive to require that, and if they can't afford to do it, then I don't know. I'll have to, that's a question I need some time to actually research. So.
And if I can make a comment on that, is we had sewer issues last year and we did a USA for digging. Well, come to find out, there's a bunch of mains in that area where we had to have the city kind of guide us. Luckily, the issue was inside the fence for us, but it would be really hard for us to do anything on the outside with all those mains because the well is right there, to try and do some sort of improvement without, hopefully not cause any damage to those mains that are out there that need to be accessible.
I have a question. How often do you meet, Bert? How often do you have your meetings?
Our meetings are once a month, but every Friday we do a weekly food giveaway from 10 to 12. Where we set up the food, pull up the trailer, cars pull up, give them the box of food or the bag, and they're gone. I mean, we've gotten it to where we don't even ask for names or any of that information. It's like, here's some food, here you go. So it gets used for sure every Friday.
Which in that kind of circumstance doesn't prompt the ADA issues. Because you're not having access.
No, they're not in the building, they're just outside.
So just a quick answer in my literally 30-second research here on this. It's joint and several liability for commercial landlords and tenants, which is probably kind of a close approximation here. But I don't know that, us as a governmental agency may change that a little bit. So it is something we need to, things should be up to ADA standards if we're going to be allowing, that's just going to be my recommendation on all of these. We need to be, if we're providing a use or essentially what would be equivalent of a lease of the property, then I think we need to be leasing compliant properties, especially under the current legislative, the scheme in California and sort of the stance they take with this stuff. And so there's no way to shift I don't think there's really a true way to shift liability. We can try, but it doesn't necessarily work. So I think ultimately it's a joint and several situation potentially. It's kind of like the sidewalk law stuff, right?
Is this similar to the sidewalk issue we were dealing with the mailboxes?
Well, it's kind of similar, but that one, yeah, that one though, it's not even that's not a lease. They're just literally in the right of way. So I think that one, we actually have stronger stance that it is the responsibility of the property owner, right? So because it's in our right of way, but it's wrong in our right of way, and they were the ones that put it there. So I think that one is a little bit of a different situation. But here, it's one of those situations where, even if a tenant wants to lease the property and we want to lease it to them, if we all both know that there's a problem there, then we're both going to probably be on the hook. Even if you try to we can try transferring liability, and we've done that in the past. But I think that as these laws tend to kind of tighten their grip on trying to get compliance, I think it's going to be harder. So just it's a big, cautionary statement at this point, but it's stuff we need to look at.
Johnny?
I was just gonna recommend, once we're, updating this agreement, kind of consistent with what we just got through with the barn theater on the clarifying the use of the current one. It really just talks about youth activities. And so, you know, if there's going to be food giveaways and stuff like that, which, you know, may or may not be permitted, but I think we should specify a little bit more on, because currently this old agreement in numbers 1, 2, and 3, it just talks about, you know, any youth activity, licensee agrees that all youth activities be conducted on said premises, you know, that type of thing. So just if there's going to be other uses allowed, I think that should be spelled out in the agreement too. So there's not, should they be doing this or should they not be doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good point too.
Thank you.
Well,
And the reason, if I can say, the reason we started doing that is because we could no longer do youth events anywhere because of COVID. We still wanted to participate and help out the city, the community. So we helped out by starting the food giveaways, doing donations that we give out to the classrooms. It's just a different way of us to help the community and help the kids.
Maria, do you have any comment?
I know that there, I mean, and this is where Javier probably needs to come in. There may be, I know what the cost of improvement, restroom improvements are expensive. I mean, there's no way you're getting out of that for less than 5,000. We'll probably get in. So, I know there are certain things that will trigger, that gets to that. So I guess that can become part of the, you know, absent those improvements, what kind of activities would be allowed? And then if there are those other things, those improvements will have to be, other improvements will have to be done before they can be allowed.
Yeah, Mr. Wallace, I believe that the level 2 is once the repair is over 15,000, it triggers prevailing wage on our part.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're gonna have the repair be a city project, which sounds like that would be what we're referring to there. If it ended up being over 15,000, it would trigger prevailing wage.
So a bathroom might be less than that, but a parking lot's gonna be more. It's even for a single space. Well, you should see that.
Does that trigger even if the organization does it themselves?
That can be part of the agreement, and that,
It wouldn't matter because it's on city property.
property, it prompts it.
CIR is going to say on city property doesn't matter. Ultimately, you get the benefit of it. It's a public project, therefore prevailing wage.
Apologize if Lex on full bad news.
Yeah, sorry. This is.
It can be done in.
Anybody want to ask another question they don't want to hear the answer to?
I
need something stronger than a vanilla latte right now.
In the parking lot be done by city staff. They did the airport and the corridors.
Well,
the
they did.
problem there is there's no, I think it's just dirt, I don't think there's foundation.
Yeah, there's no, if there's no
ground that parking lot and resurfaced it.
Theoretically, if we already had that ability, and it's something that we typically have done with staff, then we could justify doing it without triggering prevailing wages, doing it in-house, not out and not having a contract for it. But that just gets tricky. I don't know. I know we do some asphalt work, but I don't know that we do that kind of asphalt work.
So probably the best approach to meet a parking requirement would be to combine it with the, well, shoot, is that going to I was going to say combine it with the parking lot that the parks master plan talks about and having a path. Yeah, so there's going to be a well, it is planned for there to be a parking restroom facility and those sorts of things on this side of the slough. Is there a way to have path of travel to it? Because you're going to have your handicap parking for a park space to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
It won't fix the restroom on the inside, but there would be handicap accessibility as well as parking that would be part of the parks project.
part of the parks project, which eventually in the future, that area will be taken anyway. Is that correct, where the building sits?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay, that was a question.
Well, so I'm just trying to problem solve the parking issue,
Okay,
which is there's gonna be a larger park. Right now, there's no parking
correct. I
for either.
Yeah,
So if you're gonna, and it's something that Donnie's folks have to tackle, which is the folks that illegally park in the park
In the
when they're
park.
using that arbor there, which is why we said we need to develop, if we're gonna have that large of an arbor. And there needs to be, and you're gonna have these other amenities, there needs to be restroom facility, because right now we have porta potties out there, or at least we did,
I did, so.
until they were setting them on fire, right? There was
That and, yeah.
other stuff, so.
oh,
Yeah. So restroom facilities, playground facilities, and so there's a, I don't know, $500,000, or more than that, probably $1 million improvement that's planned for that corner. So it might be better to have that lit. It's already gonna be there, so plan it accordingly. At least to address the parking issue. In terms of activities within the facility itself, that'd be a Kiwanis issue.
All of these, you mean, these.
Right, so you saw the fire marshal said, that based on the occupancy, you one of two ways, either redo the equipment to be consistent with fire or remove the exit sign. Now, if best of that would probably be to replace the hardware to make it
right there.
compliant instead of removing the fire exit. But those are the choices. The fire marshal said either remove the fire exit, even though there's a secondary exit, but the secondary exit doesn't have the right hardware on it. So either fix the door with the right hardware or remove the fire exit sign.
A lot of work. The roof.
And the roof needs to be redone, so.
Yes, okay, so for what it's worth. So with this, and then granted, this is and I don't really, I mean, I have to check and see what the really check is still good law, because this is out of a legal, like an article that I'm reading out of 2004. So the ADA, so there's not, even though there isn't any grandfathering, so we can't just say, oh, it's an old building and therefore we don't have to, unless we do improvements. So that's what I was concerned about. And that is correct. We can't just rely on the fact that we're not doing that. Oh, we're leasing it as is and there's no improvements, so therefore we don't have to update it. Because what the ADA actually says is it requires the removal of, quote, access impediments as are readily achievable. So, and that's a moving target, and it depends on like the resources of the parties, but I don't think we're going to be very sympathetic. We're not going to get a sympathetic review on that, right? Because they're going to say, hey, you're public, you know better than anybody that you need to do these things. You can go find the funding. You have access to funding. You need to get it done, right? So I would be concerned about, I think that we can't, that would probably maybe potentially, get us out of certain types of improvements, but I don't know where that line is. I do think we would have to really make sure that access to the building is covered though. So, and again, I'm speaking, this is something that Javier may have better handle on as our ADA, compliance guy, right? So he can probably speak better to it and we can check with him on the specifics. So, but it's a little helpful. At least it's not, I feel like there's some wiggle room there. I just don't know how much.
A work in progress.
Yep.
In progress.
Well, what do we want it? So do we want to do a bigger review on these things, get these big questions answered and figure out whether it makes sense for this property at this point?
Yes.
And then if not, we can try to work with Kiwanis to find a different property. This one's just not, it's going to be either a delay or we have concerns about renewing at this point on it. Well,
or to define activities consistent with the improvements that exist there, and
yeah,
so like the drive-by food distribution doesn't prompt those things.
Yeah.
Well, it might not, looking at, ADA and oftentimes too, you have to have accessibility for those that may want to work there or volunteer there, because you can't exclude somebody because they wouldn't be able to have the same access. Right, Julia?
Yeah. Yep.
My recommendation here is to punt this to Javier. There's a lot of people conjecturing about things right now that are not qualified to.
I know, I don't,
We could talk about it and think if Javier has some input and guide and some guiding. Yeah, because. You're okay with that for them to do the research more and to bring it back with the information that we need? Is there anything you'd like to add, Vice Mayor?
The only thing I would add is not knowing, just like everyone else answers with all these, and there's a lot, but finding a way to at least look at it is to Kiwanis, is it possible to have them there, and what would be workable? As of right now, we don't even know what that is, so we can't even try to negotiate anything that's helpful, I believe. If, you know, trying to find a way that we could keep them there and providing a service.
My recommendation here would be to have Javier evaluate the site and tell you what would be permissible activities and what would not be.
Okay,
yep.
That would give
He's,
them
he's the one that's
something.
licensed to make this.
And then that
Okay.
would
He's
give
captain. He's the one that is
the club.
certified to make these
Yeah.
decisions.
and bring back. Okay.
Kiwanis would be open to that. I mean, the doors are always open. We just need to know when so we can have a volunteer there.
Okay, Bert, thank you so much.
All
And
right, well, thank you so much for working with us.
is there anything else you would like to add, or just wait till we bring it back?
Just wait till we bring it back.
Okay, that's good.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We'll move on to the next one, review of the Comisión Honorífica Mexicana Americana Agreement.
Actually, before we leave that, because
Oh.
did they provide their insurance certificate?
No, so what they provided was a member's statement saying that they were getting insurance, but that for one, I did get in touch with Teresa De La Rosa, who's the.
No, for Kiwanis.
Oh, for Kiwanis, yes, I think it
It's in
was.
the packet.
It's back.
Yeah, I just, that was one of the.
Oh, yeah,
Homework,
yeah.
homework assignments, so I wanted to give Fernando with credit. So part of this exercise is the, things that we should be doing, confirming are they happening, and if they're not, checking the boxes that need to be done. And one of them was, they're required under all these agreements to pull the insurance with Kiwanis.
Yeah.
And names us as so I want to give Fernando.
Good job, Fernando.
Way to go, Fernando.
Oh, this is a working.
Don, okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Don.
Information.
Was that San Fernando just a courier? It's actually Don.
Going back is a good. Certain things happening, like as in, are they, and there's, well, a lot of these agreements are their certificate of insurance is current and stuff like that, so we're kind of going through to make sure those are boxes that we're checking. I did get a hold of Teresa De La Rosa, who stated she is the current president of the Comisión. Unfortunately, she was out of state whenever I talked to her, but she had her treasurer, Evel Beltran, submit it's basically, it was a member statement saying that they do get insurance, but it's not exactly what we were looking
It's
for.
not.
So there's still information that we're going to be coming to us within the hopefully next few days. So that's pretty much what I had on that one. As far as
So I guess it's the disclosure on that. So Kiwanis had the required insurance, verification of insurance coverage. And we still need to get that from Commission.
correct.
Okay. And
Are they, do they have any requests for what they want with regard to this? Because is theirs expired too, or they have one in place?
No, it's mid-term.
Oh, it's in the middle of it. Okay.
it's in the middle of
Yeah,
it.
we're close, but
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, I can tell we've updated because they're like, for instance, their liability insurance provisions are updated. It's what we typically require now. It's at the $2 million limit, not the 1 million.
And remember, we just kind of highlighted on the cargo container. Do we know if it's still there?
That's the big thing.
It's gone, so that they never signed it, so it's not there. They removed it.
if it ever even showed up. I'm not even sure if it would have ever got one, but I know it's not there.
So
Okay,
that's not even an issue either then. So I don't think, I don't know that we need any changes, at least from my end, unless there's something substantive that you guys think needs to be addressed.
I don't see anything
Okay.
other than, did you see anything different?
No, but I was gonna ask, did they have any feedback or concerns or anything on their side?
Ms. Russo knew about the appointment, but I don't know if they're actually back in the state or not, so I'm not sure. I mean, maybe we can probably keep it on for the next one and then just reach out this time.
Okay, maybe one more time.
One more time.
Yeah, I mean, I this one isn't one that, since we're in the middle of it, there's no reason to bring it back unless there's something that we really need to deal with. We were concerned that we needed to maybe potentially do something with the cargo container if they have one.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. Were we also going to be including any of the language for the possessory interest and stuff into this agreement as well?
I would have thought, well, let me see. I would have thought I already had that. in this
No,
one.
this is why it was brought up at the last one. I think Maria's the one that brought it up on this one because of.
We have it in there and they were taking issue with it, I thought.
Well, in the past,
In the past, okay.
it's been an issue in the last.
Oh, let me look. I thought,
It was
we
mid-
actually language, but they weren't sure why they were being charged accessory interest tax.
That was when, bless her heart, when Grace was.
Right.
Was alive and it was filling out the paperwork and brought it in.
Right.
But
That was 7 years ago. It was mid,
yeah, it was
like
a lot,
2015, 16,
yeah.
somewhere like
I had a conversation with Elba maybe a couple of years ago. She came
yeah.
in.
with who?
Elba.
Oh,
Oh, that's.
when it switched over probably from,
Not
because I think you have
She
to,
was.
I think you have to do it
explained to her,
annually. I think it's an annual exemption. I think you have to find a
I
way.
think the welfare exemption, I think.
It's located in subsection. It's on, I can't, well, these page numbers are weird. It's on basically the second page under rights and obligations, section 4F. It says in the event of any possessory interest is assessed as a result of this agreement, CHMA shall pay and be responsible for the full amount assessed. So it's already in there.
it's in here.
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right.
The only issue we've had for the committees had to deal with the mural that was
Right.
done, which was addressed by letter, so. Hopefully, if there's any other modifications to the building that it's requested permission versus forgiveness.
Anything that would have to, they would have to get a permit for, or bring it to us. Okay, so that, all we're gonna do is get the insurance liability on this one.
Yeah, we'll try to bring that up.
Okay, and then we will be bringing back Kiwanis with all that updated information.
Mhm.
The conversation with Javier, who has all the answers.
Sure, he'll be thrilled to know that.
And he's gonna probably say, what?
Well, it's a little bit like the fire marshal. He's like, well, if you do this, and you have to do this, and if you do this, and you have to do this, and if you don't do this, then you don't have to do that.
Correct.
So,
Is there anything else that needs to be brought for the next meeting? We're bringing both of these back as an update on Kiwanis.
Well, no, do we have any others? And then. Go ahead.
We have,
Like anything substantial right now?
have any other organizations?
Yep.
Haven't dealt with the big ones.
We
Yeah,
we
like
could bring the
all the-
list back and go through what we had in the Shiloh meetings. And see what we.
The fair,
Children.
The fair, we need to do the fair.
okay, then let's.
so
put
we
the
could
fair.
probably get into the Porterville Fair
Okay,
license agreement.
Since it's a new year, should we bring the list back again, just as? kind of-
Yeah, we might want to, yeah.
Back the list, so we can start scheduling them. I think we probably should put the list on every time, and that way, as we get through these, we can keep the ball rolling.
okay.
And then are we gonna have the audit?
Going soon and.
So actually, I appreciate you mentioning that, Julie. Well, we're still in audit, right? Maybe Marie, can you speak to
Yes.
state of the audit?
We just had the exit conference today.
Oh,
Oh,
So, and there's still some little things that,
Like my letter, I saw they sent me an email today asking for a letter,
yeah,
so I'll get that done.
finish better. But they want me to file another extension with GFOA,
okay,
which is what happened last year.
right.
Awesome. So I will. But, and I'm still also completing one section of the report. I still need to finish it. So some need to,
Okay, so not yet, is what I'm hearing.
not yet.
It's still in process.
okay, not yet.
But specifically on ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds, Maria did a calculation in some of you may recall, out of the 20 million that we were approximately 20 million, half of it, there's what was called the $10 million general government activity exemption. $10 million, you don't need to, you can use it for any governmental purpose. The other 10 million was restricted, consistent with certain activities. And most notably, we did the vaccine program out of that. We're looking at homeless facility and services improvements at the navigation center as part of that. We've done safety, essential worker and safety pay out of that. And in any event, there's probably 5 million or so probably remaining in that pool. I'm using, this isn't an auditable number, but I'm using swaps right now, $4 or $5 million. In any event, Maria there's an actual worksheet you can do on lost revenue, which she did, and she found that she thought that it met the $20 million. All of it could be subject to under the lost revenue calculation. All of it being, instead of just taking the $10 million automatic, I guess you could say, under the calculation, then all 20 million would be subject to that governmental purpose. But she wanted the auditor to validate it, and he said, sure, for how much money?
I not asked him again.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do that, but
You feel comfortable enough with the
calculation.
calculation?
Yeah, it's a simple calculation, really. It's a template that I got from CSMFO, the California Society of Municipal Officers,
Okay.
or the GFOA. So it's based on our annual financial report.
Okay.
So
So that's what I
I
wanted
was
to.
just wanted him to look at it, make sure that it's fine. I didn't think it was going to take hours and hours to do it for him to charge us.
I don't think he wants to. I guess here's the question for the committee: Do you want to get a quote on that, or are you comfortable with Maria's? She's done the worksheet. She's found everything to be achievable.
I think that if Maria is comfortable with it, then I am comfortable with it.
I'm comfortable with
Okay.
Maria
Me too.
not retiring in the.
Yeah. Okay, snuck that in there.
So just, I guess that would be just.
Actually, maybe we should, since I'm leaving, I won't be.
Oh my! You said you're leaving
Oh, don't say that, Maria.
She's not.
after
She's
2020.
kidding. She's kidding. She's kidding.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I thought I'd make you aware of that. Two items on other. Know that we've had a gentleman very unhappy from Porterville Little League about the exclusive use of Zalek Park by the Porterville Angels, which is kind of a competitor to Porterville Little League, which Porterville Little League has an exclusive use of Burton's ball fields, which the city helps facilitate. So just kind of, we're having lots of conversations and who has exclusive use of what, which ironically, this individual benefited from the exclusive use of girls softball at Hayes Field when his daughter played softball. So I guess it all depends on your current circumstance of when you think somebody should have exclusive use of something. So I just want to make you aware, given that our leases that somebody, the concerned member of the public is concerned why the city did an exclusive use of Zalak Park's ball fields to Angels baseball.
Okay.
And there was something, is there another? This was another item I was going to bring up.
I was gonna say that issue exists in every city.
Yeah.
Tulare has those same fights too, over the soccer.
Speaking of Burton, their use, so we've had a shared use of the corporation yard for their operations expires in August. So they'll be vacating the city yard in August, and right now they're in a temporary location. They're moving to a temporary location. They have temporary use of an airport hangar. Which you can use. You can do it on a temporary basis with FAA under FAA guidelines because they're supposed to be used for aviation purposes, which they are not. But you're allowed to do it on a temporary basis if you don't have a competing aviation use, which we don't. They're supposed to be constructing a new MOT yard. They purchased property and supposed to be developing a new office and bus maintenance style. But in any event, I just make you aware that in August, their use agreement expires in August. So, which is good. Both agencies have grown substantially in the 20 years since I was entered into, and really it became a compression of space out there. So, so that's coming up. And speaking of the airport, a member of council brought up the question about the leases. So the question was about term lengths and that sort of thing. So just to make everybody aware, one member of council inquired about that. We have had, going back to the Burton thing, we've had an individual significantly involved in aviation at the airport complain about non-aviation uses of hangars at the airport. So.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Is that a formal complaint, Jason? Okay. No. They've raised the issue about the number of non-aviation uses of hangars at the airport. So sorry to just making you aware of all of the some of the tensions that are up.
Is there a waiting list for aviation uses out at the airport?
No, we
No.
have vacant.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly. So, okay.
Just in disclosure, all of the competing interests.
Yeah.
They call that politics. Competition of interest.
Interesting.
So is there anything else that needs to get scheduled for the next meeting?
Well, it's Kiwanis Commission and the list of committees. What else?
And we talked about the fair.
The fair agreement.
Which I did have a conversation with. Who did I have it with? Gosh darn it. Because they paid off their note to
Yeah.
the city. And they would like to talk about, now I would imagine it would be to purchase the property from the city.
Yeah. I remember you mentioned at the last meeting, actually.
So I think when you
Okay.
get into this, you'll probably have that. Gosh, who told me this? I want to say John Corkins, but it wasn't. So I have to remember who I.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I can't.
Okay.
there's a lot going on.
Was somebody with authority to speak, though, out there?
Okay,
I was gonna say Susie Godfrey, but I don't think that's right. Too many conversations.
okay, well, looking at the calendar, how's February the 22nd?
So that'll work for me as long as I can Zoom. My problem is I think once after February, we'll have to go back to in person, and I'm gonna have a potential issue unless these meetings only always go an hour. In which case then I can make it out there, but I've got a 6 o'clock regular board meeting. That fourth Wednesday of the month, every month. And it's a Zoom, but I have to be able to be back in at home to do the Zoom.
Okay,
So at 6 o'clock. So I just don't know if that's gonna be an issue, but it won't be a problem for this next one, because as long as you guys are good with, I think we can still Zoom on the 22nd of February. So,
okay. At 4 o'clock.
yep.
Jason reminded me who told me that. Dennis X.
Oh,
He's on the fair board. He's the one
Okay.
that, he's the one that.
The treasurer.
okay.
Yeah, he's the one that told, I remember telling Jason remembered who I.
Aren't you glad Jason's
I know,
here?
so he doesn't, yeah, exactly, this is why, some lifetimes, I remember some of the things.
Well, Jason, I'm so grateful that you're in here.
Recorded and stop recording and
All
it's
right.
overlap.
So February the 22nd at 4 o'clock, and then we'll look at the meetings for the next time.
Apparently Ash Wednesday, you guys can believe that.
That's on Ash Wednesday?
Yep.
We're doing it on a Wednesday.
Didn't we do,
Okay.
we're on a Wednesday, today's
Okay,
Wednesday.
I know,
Afternoon.
I don't know.
Man, that's. That isn't even, that
It is
isn't.
February the 22nd at 4 o'clock. And if there's no other discussion, nothing else to be brought to the table, it is 5:02. This meeting is adjourned.
All right, everybody, take care. Thanks.
Sorry.